Good evening, and my name is Quittin Time, and recently I helped out a friend of mine set up a control panel for his Hell Let Loose, and figured take some time here to walk you through on setting up a CRCON in Windows. I know most individuals typically prefer Linux, but for those of you that don't want to go the route of having to learn Linux and try and figure that out on your own, I have made this to help. So hopefully this will get you going and get your server up and running. So right here, I have all of the tools that we're going to need to do this. I have already included all of this in the actual description of this video. You'll see information here on the actual getting started for the Hell Let Loose CRCON. This is direct from the GitHub. Unfortunately, most of this information is going to be related directly to a Linux installation, since that is the preferred method. However, again, making this out of spite of that. So this will be included. You'll also see a link here for a Git download. This is going to be essentially the program we use to communicate between our computer to Docker, which is going to run the program here for us. For this, I would recommend double check, see which one is going to be better for your computer. In my situation, I have used the 64-bit. Either should work as intended for this. The next one would be the actual container that runs the programs in the background that retain and do the applications necessary to run your CRCON. For this, you are going to want to download this format here, the 64 by 86. This will, again, run your application. You will also need a standalone version of the compose attached to the Docker. This will be code that you'll actually run through Git to add it to your Docker itself. It is not something you will have to download. Next, I would recommend personally using Notepad. However, you can use whatever coding program or text program you would prefer. I just typically like to use Notepad out of preference. Either a program that you chose, whether it's text or something from the Microsoft Store, as long as you can see everything in a line-by-line format, you shouldn't have any issues. This is a non-requirement. However, it is something I recommend. And just to save you some time on the back end in case you don't have this, the basic requirements for running your CRCON will include having your computer running at all times. So that does put most individuals in a tricky situation. Not everyone's got a different computer to run this on. So if you've got a laptop, or even if you've got like a Raspberry Pi or something like that, something that can run this separately from your main computer, I would recommend it since it needs to be running 24/7. However, there is the opportunity to do this on your primary computer. I just don't recommend it. It can put additional stress on your PC, and it can cause negative detriment to any games you're playing or anything else that you're doing. It does take away from the power and performance of your computer. With this method, though, I would like you to be aware, depending on who your internet service provider is, you will have to double check and see if you have something called a static IP. Typically, most internet service providers do have a dynamic IP, which just basically means whatever your outgoing IP is, whatever address could be found from outside of your internet, changes. It's not set in stone. So a lot of internet providers do only have that for business or commercial use. And if you intend to do that, there is a major difference in cost associated. So as an alternative, I personally use no IP. And essentially what it does is in the background, it will check your IP every 30 seconds to every minute or so and change the IP that's being registered on your computer and send it through their servers to whatever custom IP you choose. Obviously, it's not entirely custom. There are some limitations on names. However, it is a massive jump over having to memorize numbers for one and changing ones at that. So my personal recommendation, using this, there is a small fee with it. However, yearly, you're looking at less than $50, I believe, if I recall. So that is my recommendation there. So jumping in here, getting started. I do have all this installed already. However, get all this pulled up. We're going to start off here with Git. You're going to pull up Git CMD on your computer. And once that is loaded, it should be listed to your C drive under users, to whatever the name of your PC is or whatever your profile is that you're under. You're going to actually pull back open. You're getting started here. You're going to make sure that you're on requirements and scroll down until you see my apologies, I'm on the wrong one. Until you go to installation, you're going to scroll down and look for the Git clone. So right here on the clone, you're just going to hit this little copy button. You're going to minimize your tab, come back to the Git command, and paste that here. It is going to say cloning. You'll see it go through its download process. Once that's finished, it's all done. It should already be in your C drive. And to prove that here to you, if you open up your C drive, you will see underneath your users, that same profile, it'll show up as Hell Let Loose CRCON tool. Once that is done, we're going to take this, move it to the side, and actually go into that file. We're going to scroll down. We're going to take this default.env. You're going to copy and paste this however you like. You can Control-C, right-click, copy, whatever you want to do. And we're going to paste that here. Once that is done, the next step is just to delete the entire name. You're going to leave the file extension, that .env, hit enter. And now we've set up the first step of this. This file we're going to actually open with your notepad, whatever program you're using. And it's going to pop up with something that looks just like this. There's a lot of gibberish here, and make this a little easier to look at. Basically, you're not going to mess around with anything that's in here. There are some few lines that you'll fill out. The first step of this, just to jump straight to the point, you're going to scroll down until you find database details. You're going to find the Hell Let Loose DB password. And what this does is this is actually going to be whatever key line you put in here is going to encrypt everything that runs through your CRCON for your admins. So if they're passwords, emails, whatever they're using, this is the encryption. So as far as this goes, I would recommend at least 20 characters. I'd say stick to letters from the US alphabet as well as numbers. Stay away from special characters. That can be a little finicky. You can see that there are some that are already prohibited. And just to make things easy, you can type whatever you want here. So I'm just going to put something simple. Again, stick to 20 characters. It'll make things a whole lot better for you. Afterwards, you're going to actually scroll down here to your CRCON Web API secret. It's the exact same thing. It's setting up advanced settings for your CRCON Online. It's also for encrypting. It's going to be the exact same thing. So you're just going to set up something unique to you, make it as random as possible, and that's what you're going to roll with as far as that goes. So once that's set up, that is it for encryption. You're just going to scroll on down here to server 1. This is where you'll have to pull up the control panel for whatever service provider that you are using. My computer's tweaking out here, don't mind me. And on this here, you're going to take your server IP. So whatever is the public IP for connecting to your server, it's actually going to be filled out right here. However, for these next two, you're going to be taking from the CRCON side of your server. The CRCON port is what you're going to use to essentially query the server. That's going to go and get filled in right about there. For the next step, you're going to have your Hell Let Loose CRCON password. It should also be unique per server. It is not shared across multiple servers. It should be unique. That is all you need to do for this particular instance if you're setting up just one server. However, if you have multiple servers, you're going to need to scroll down. There are multiple tabs here, and it's the exact same thing. Your server outbound IP, your CRCON port, and then your CRCON password. All those details should be filled out for every server you've got, all the way up to 10 servers if you have them. You may be asking, taking a look here, what is this for right here? This can be used to change the details of your server from your CRCON. You can use it to change the name directly through the CRCON. However, it would still require a restart typically. Otherwise, it takes forever. And I will say not every service provider has this option. You could put in the details and it would not work. So out of personal preference, I don't normally recommend filling this out. I would say just go the long route, pull up your provider, open up your configuration files, and just change the name of your server there. It's as simple as doing that, saving it, and restarting. It's just how that should go. Once this is done, all you would need to do is, out of personal preference, delete whatever you're not using. So if you've got one server, anything from these hashtags all the way down, you can get rid of, and same applies to everything going on here. So in my situation, I'm going to be testing this with one server. Going to scroll all the way down to 10, and it's gone. Once that's done, you just hit Control S or save your file, and you are all set as far as this little file here goes. So you can close this out, be all done with that. I'm going to pull this off to the side here and put my details in there too. You don't need to see that. And once that is done, the next step of this, since we may or may not have multiple servers, is going to actually be scrolling up, going to Docker templates, and taking one of these two, whichever applies to you. You're going to copy it, go back, and paste it in here. The one change you'll make to this file on the surface is changing it to compose.yaml. You're going to open this file, and the file should show you a whole lot more stuff here. Good news is we won't have to mess with this too much. It's going to be the exact same as the end of that previous file. It's up to you on how much of this you want to leave here. You can see mine recognized. I only have one server filled in as far as details go. So I'm going to take this and delete it. If you have more than one server, you will see information like this just showing underneath all of those other servers that did have information filled out. Or if you left it with whatever the default was, it'll show them. They'll be empty of most information. Again, personal preference, I recommend deleting it. It's a query, so it could potentially put more strain on your CPU if you leave it there. So I just like to take it off. It saves performance. Otherwise, you're going to Control Save or File Save, however you want to do it, and you're going to close that out. Once that's wrapped up, we can actually go back here, and you will see on the actual requirements here for it, it'll show you going through all this stuff for the files we had downloaded. We've already gone through Git. I've got Docker downloaded. What we're going to actually do here is double check the standalone. So this actually will go through on PowerShell. You don't run this through Git. And we're going to pop this open here. You're going to just right click your start button. Go to terminal admin. It's going to give you that prompt for admin control. And you're basically going to run this here. It's not really going to give you any kind of acknowledgement that you did it. So just paste it in, hit enter. It's going to say bits transferring. And once that's done, we can test the installation with that code that we were given here. just switch right back and paste anyway. So it'll confirm for you the version of Docker Compose installed, and that should also match the version of the Docker itself that we had, the program that runs the containers. So with that, you can close out your PowerShell. You won't need that anymore. I'm going to close this out here as well. Don't need that anymore. Once this Docker is installed, what we're going to do is we're going to have it run for us in the background. I'm going to pop that open. It does take a second to load. It has to run in the background. It is a high intensive use. So again, I was recommending putting that on a different computer than your primary. So just got to wait for this to pop up. There we go. And your container should look something like this. There's a chance some of you will see a failed and you're required to download something called a Linux subsystem, and it'll have like a little penguin on it for you. It'll look something like this after it's installed. You don't actually have to open that after it's installed. It just helps run this program in particular, so just leave that alone. Once all that is done, everything is set up with our files. We can go back here just to double check under the getting started. Everything else here is good to go. We've got all of our programs installed. Your information has already been plugged into the CRCON itself. What we need to do now, however, is actually get your CRCON running. So with everything in here, we've already filled out all of our details. We've already set up our compose file. We're going to go ahead and take this right here under step number 4, running for the first time. This is a 3-line code. You're going to copy that. We're going to take git and open that up. And what you're going to need to do to launch it from those files we set up, it's cd Hell Let Loose _CRCON _tool, enter. And that should have taken you to the same path that you have for where your files are. With that up, we're going to paste, Control V, don't right click, it'll freak out on you. And you're going to hit paste anyways, and then hit enter. And at that point, it's going to start pulling all the information you need in order to run the server. You'll have your front end, the supervisor, your Redis, back end, Postgres, and maintenance. Once all this is finished pulling, just so you can see in real time, this Docker will start populating all of that information, and you can hit this little arrow, it'll drag it down, and you can see all of it starting to load. So we're going to wait here for a second and let that load for us. As you can see, a prompt popped up for my tools here. What that's going to do is it's going to open up the ports necessary to project this here. And we'll double check later on to see if it actually pushed it through. If not, I'll show you how to manually do that. And what we can do to double check is you pull this over and you'll actually see that localhost port has been pushed open at 9010. So that is the front end of your CRCON loading there. Everything's healthy. You can see the percentage of use. It is normal to see this in the red for some computers, especially on that first launch. I've seen it go all the way up to 800, 900% for individuals with like 800%. So at a minimum, I do recommend that you have at least an 800% CPU usage available to use in a worst case scenario, in case, say, you're hosting a game and people are visiting stats. You don't want it to be super laggy. So that is all set up. It's all done. It's all good to go. As far as getting everything running, it's all there. What we need to do at this point is check on our end if it pops up. So I'm going to double check this here. Yep, there you go. Localhost 8010/login. And for everyone that sets this up for the first time, it's typically going to be admin. And you can see here that it's showing up as admin for me here. And if you have more than one server, you'll see them all populate here at the bottom left. So super easy to set up as far as that goes. There is some more steps here as far as making sure people can access from the outside and creating other accounts. Obviously, you don't want it to be admin forever, and if you have multiple users, you have to be able to create them separate accounts. So, in order to make sure that is possible, what we need to do here is actually go to your other, and you're going to pop up your CRCON settings. Right here under server URL, you're going to need to plug in whatever IP you intend to use for everyone's access. This is the CSRF, or essentially the verification of the authorized address that you would like service to be used on. So as far as mine is going to go, it's going to be HTTP :// outcast.noip.us 8010 and then /. Yours could be different. Typically, the only difference between yours and mine would be right here. If you don't have that no IP service I talked about, yours should look like your outgoing IP. And not to expose myself here, but if you're looking for your IP, you can type find my IP. You go to what is my address, and it'll locate your IP4. You can see I'm in Colorado. Haha. So all this would be here, and just to test it for you, you can take your IP4. You can pop this up here as well, 8010, and it'll do the exact same thing. An alternative to that, if you're not 100% positive, this should always work for a home network, 127.0.0.1, 8010. It'll have the same effect. So that's a universal one you can use if you're not sure of your IP in that moment, but you do have to have your IP to finish this setup if you want people to use this externally. Otherwise, you can only use this in your home network by yourself. So once all that is set up, you can essentially just hit submit. I'm going to refrain. I have this running on another server. So everything here is good to go. Once you have that saved, what you're going to need to do is actually go back to this. We're going to scroll down until we get to the CSRF setup. We're actually going to scroll past all this and copy this code right here. What this is going to do is it's going to take your containers, it's going to restart them with that new IP that we added as the verified IP to go to in order to make updates to your CRCON. That way people can access it externally and have sufficient permission to do so. It's a verification of your authority to do so. So you just hit Control V, you hit paste anyways, and you'll see it's stopping the services, and then it'll turn back over into Docker Compose up and restart those services for you. As you can see, it restarted, no errors, we're all set and good to go. It still shows that port of authentication for you. So everything is good to go. And what I can actually do on my end here so that I don't jinx myself, I'm actually going to stop my items. All right. Those are turning off. I'm going to pull this back up here. And as you can see, I will already have something set up. I won't be able to pull it up through Opera. It does not have a certified certificate, so it is not considered secure for most individuals. So Opera has a protective feature that'll stop you. Alternative, just pull up Edge. You're going to pull that on down in here, and all you got to do is go to your CRCON, pull that up, and perfect. It's all here set up. You'll see that mine was already set up before. Have the 2 servers, but you now have full access to your CRCON. The biggest change that you will need to make before you do anything else is going to admin on your CRCON. The reason we need to do this is because you just set it up. Your only profile right now is admin username, admin password, and that is not what you want. So what you need to do is go to change password and then type admin and then whatever you want your new password to be. However, if you prefer, you can always go to users. You can create a new one, give it a super user authority, sign in on that, and then just delete the admin profile. Entirely up to you. However, this is also the same steps you will take in order to set up logins for any of your admins for your server. You'll have to put in a username for them. You'll plug in their Steam ID. I'll add a link in the description on how to find that. Relatively simple. And then once you're all set, you are all done and good to go. You have active profiles and everything is finished. You should as well, as long as everything was functioning properly as far as ports and forwarding goes, be able to access it from outside of your network. For me, easiest way to do that, I'd recommend just getting on your phone, disconnect from your home Wi-Fi, use your cellular, and try and access it, whether through your IP or your custom server URL. If you do end up running into issues with setting up the external access, there is a good chance that your internet service provider and or your server restrictions on your computer for outgoing and inbound rules could be restricting that flow of traffic. So in order to get around that and make sure that you have access, what you're going to need to do is come down to your start. You're just going to type control panel, and then you're going to go to your system and security. It's going to be under Windows Defender Firewall. Advanced settings. You're going to hit yes on this here, and then you will see your inbound and outbound rules. So what you'll need to do in order to access this properly, dependent on how many servers you have, there are multiple ports you need to add. So for your servers, if you just have one, you are going to need ports 7010, 7011, and 7012. For the next ports, you will also need 8010 up to 8012, as well as 9010 up to 9012. So you do the math. If you have more than one server, you just essentially keep going. You multiply that as you go. So if you do have 3 servers, just as safety precaution, you're going to want 7010 all the way to 7016, and then 8000 and 9000, so on. Typically, it should already add itself to this. I'm going to scroll through. It pops up under something weird, so you can always double check and go through to see if it's there. All you'd have to do is hit new rule on inbound and on outbound, create those rules. You set it as a port, and then you need to make sure it's set for TCP and do a separate one for UDP, and then you can do the ranges of those ports as well up to the 7016, like I was saying. And you're going to allow the connection. This is up to you, however you want to set this. You can name it whatever you want, and then you hit finish. Make sure you do that for UDP, TCP, inbound, and outbound rules. If that still does not fix access from the outside, that means your internet service provider is the one at fault. They are going to require you to port forward from your router, and That's unique to whoever your internet service provider is. Same rules apply. 7,010, 7,012, 7,016, whatever the range is necessary for you. 7,000s, 8,000s, 9,000s. Once that is all set up, it does take a couple of minutes normally for that to go into effect. But once it does, you are all set and good to go. And your admin should be able to access your control panel externally. As far as that goes, I'll make sure all of the links and those ranges are all included in the description there for you. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to drop a question in the comments or even reach out to me by Discord. I do have my Discord of discord.gg/hostile, or reach out to me in person. I just can't guarantee that I'll respond. My username is QuittinTime. Otherwise, I hope you appreciated the video. Hopefully this makes it a whole lot easier to get your information all set up. And I look forward to seeing you all around Hell Let Loose.